What's up, YouTube? It's your boy JP's on the keys, and it's too easy to wrap another video today. And due to a lot of requests, we have Kings and Generals, a channel that a lot of people have actually asked me to look at. And also, the 30 Years War has been something that has been mentioned a lot. So definitely we're gonna watch this. But before we get to that, man, bro, like, just looking at the political state of my country right now, bro. Like, the fact, like, I've never voted. And I feel like me even putting in a vote for anybody in this race is really doing a disservice to my country, to be honest. Because we got Trump, who is an accused pedophile, accused sexual predator. He's a sexual predator. He's a bigot, a known bigot, racist activities. Just Trump and Pence. I mean, I don't know too much about Pence, but it's just something about him that I don't really trust. Then you got Joe Biden, who's from my state. Me and him are from the same state, and it's just, he got some weird history messing with kids. And then you got Kamala Harris. Of course, you got to remember the media did that, of course, to get you stirred up, because still some black people are still so naive that, they put a black person in a position of power. That must mean we're doing something. We're making progress. This black woman, Kamala Harris, she led the state of California in the process. She put the most black men in jail, like, in the history of California. Like, she put more black men in jail than Jim Crow. Jim Crow, a system that was specifically designed to hamper the progress of black people. She put more black people in jail. She was putting people in prison for marijuana related stuff, for weed, bro. Like, come on, bro. And then she wasn't releasing people on time, and just nobody likes her, man. So I already feel if Biden gets elected, then she's gonna try to implement some real harsh policy about, I don't know, man. To me, voting right now doesn't help for me. I don't feel like it matters, because this lesser of two evils narrative is trash. I don't like the way people think, like, it's the lesser of two evils, so you're just gonna accept the evil? Like, no, I don't need corrupt people leading the country. No, I don't. But let's just get to this, man.
The European wars of religion had been progressively raging for 2 centuries, gradually growing in intensity. From the Hussite Wars of the early 15th century to the French Wars of Religion in the late 16th century, it seemed as though a decisive conflagration was inevitable. The 30 Years' War concluded as one of the most devastating conflicts in the history of the world, but began as a local religious conflict. By its end, Europe, its religion and its borders had been forever changed, and upwards of 8 million people had perished. What is the story of this cataclysmic conflict, and how did it begin? We shall begin our series on the 30 Years' War with the Bohemian Revolt and the Battle of White Mountain. The first Bohemian unrest against Catholic rule, the Hussite Revolt, concluded in 1434 at the Battle of Lipany, delaying the Reformation for a century. In 1516, a Dominican friar came to the Holy Roman Empire city of Wittenberg in order to sell indulgences, material ways to reduce the amount of punishment one had to undergo due to their sins.
Oh, yeah, I remember. I learned about this in school. Like, the indulgences, people had to literally pay to have their sins forgiven. Oh, man, man, religion, they find a way to hustle people out of them. Man, religion been hustling people for centuries. Oh my goodness, man. Like I said, I'm not attacking you if you are a religious person. I'm just saying, man, the finesse. You know what I mean? They've been finessing people out of their money for 400 plus years.
In the late Middle Ages, this practice had become corrupt and commercialized. A German theologian...
Oh no! I never thought that they would abuse it. No!
Monk and priest Martin Luther objected and famously nailed his 95 Theses to the Wittenberg church.
No.
Perhaps his most...
Bro, first of all, there's no proof. There's no proof of that. And first of all, why would you mail it? Why would you nail it to the door of the church where everybody goes to? Because you got to remember, everybody, the regular townspeople are drones. They're followers. They don't know any better. He sent it to the higher religious people, like the pastors and the priests, the people that actually had pull in the community, nailing it to the door on the church. Will not do anything, because you got, like I said before, the people who are at the bottom, the people are drones. Like you see how gullible these people are. You got people literally thinking that they have to buy their forgiveness from sin. You see how gullible these people are. So you're gonna sit there and you're gonna challenge the very system that they don't know anything else about. They don't know anything else that deviates from that system. That's not gonna do anything. You like I say, if you want to break a system down, you start at the top. You don't come with the little underlings. The underlings are not going to do anything about that. Because like that wouldn't make enough sense. Like that wouldn't make sense. Like I'm just gonna give it to a regular person. Like they gonna know about all this stuff. They've been buying their forgiveness for 30 years and saving up all their hard-earned money from their job to buy their forgiveness from their sins.
Most revolutionary work was his translation of the traditionally Hebrew and Greek Bible into common German, allowing laymen to read it for themselves rather than relying on their priests. This began the Protestant Reformation. The 16th century conflicts precipitated by this Reformation began with the massive German Peasants' War of 1524 to 1525, a religious conflict exacerbated by political and economic factors, a precursor of what was to come. This period of violence, which also included the Munster Rebellion of 1532 to 1535 and the Schmalkaldic Wars of 1546 to 1555, seemingly came to an end with the Peace of Augsburg, during which Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand I established the key principle of Curius Regio, Eius Religio. This allowed the many princes of the various provinces of the empire to impose their own religion, either Catholicism or Lutheranism, on their own territory. It stabilized the situation at first, but there were problems. The 1580s saw the situation deteriorate even further under the rule of Rudolf II. The causes of this are complex, but it was probably a combination of severe climatic stresses on the European economy, external conflicts such as the ongoing 80 Years' War, and an intensification of religious extremism.
See, like I said, man, a lot of people have been killed in the name of a god. And there's been a lot of people. Like, regardless of how you feel about religion has always been a big part of history. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of how you feel, it's always been a part of every historical event that we've ever. Like, you got the Protestant Reformation, you got the Glorious Revolution, you got bro, it's a lot of movements, man. Like, you think of all these in Middle Eastern countries with the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, just like the Muslim, what was it? The Ottoman Empire were fighting against the Turks, and the Christians were going against each other. Like, religion always plays a part, and religion has a huge part of history. That's what most of these people fought wars over: religion. So you can doubt it all you want, but religion is a big part of world history, and and it's still going to continue to be a big part of world history. Still going to continue because religion is one of the most important things in this world. It's important to a lot of people. You can't discount that.
In 1606, another key moment came when the Treaty of Schiedt-Vaterok was signed between the Habsburg Holy Roman Empire monarchy and the Ottoman Empire. This marked a decrease in pressure against the empire's Balkan border due to the necessity for Ottoman soldiers to quell internal rebellion and to fight against the Safavids. This seemed like a victory for Christendom, but it also took away a unifying factor between the various religious groups in the Habsburgs' German territories, giving them breathing room to focus on their internal rivals. In 1608, Protestant princes declared the Protestant Union, a military alliance to defend the religious interests of their co-religionists under Frederick IV of the Palatinate. Feeling threatened by this, Catholic princes under Duke of Bavaria Maximilian I formed the Catholic League. One of the largest provinces in the empire, Bohemia, had enjoyed comparative religious freedom since the end of the Hussite Wars, and was one of the most tolerant lands in Europe. In 1609, Rudolf II issued the Letter of Majesty, a text which guaranteed freedom of conscience for all and liberty of worship for nobles, essentially allowing Bohemia the right to control its religious affairs free from imperial interference, but it was clear that this was a fragile compromise.
That's all a ploy to get Bohemia on your side. Obviously, you already know it's a ploy, because now it's like, oh, they don't have an official religion. Let's go in and make them practice ours.
The second died in 1612 and was replaced by Matthias, who was more radical in his religious policies and began to slowly roll back to the right. The new emperor also had no children, so the succession was an open question. As a 4-year dispute over the guardianship of the Electoral Palatinate concluded in 1614, Frederick V became the elector. He was a talented military leader and a zealous Calvinist who firmly believed in a Catholic conspiracy to annihilate German Protestantism and positioned himself as a leader of the Protestant princes.
Just to think that all these religions are like offshoots of Christianity. Because even Catholicism is an offshoot of Christianity, because Catholics worship Mother Mary. They don't worship Jesus. They worship Mother Mary. So it's like Catholicism, Protestants, Baptist, Presbyterian, what else? Pentecostal. Like, it's so many offshoots of Christianity that like you will literally like be studying for years if you try to study every different little sector that even occupies Christianity.
By 1617, Matthias fell ill, and Ferdinand of Styria had been elected as the heir designate, to the dread of the Bohemians. They had heard tales of Ferdinand's vicious counter-reformation as Archduke of Austria, and feared that he would not allow non-Catholics in Bohemia. On June 6, 1617, he ascended to the Bohemian throne as Ferdinand II, to the fury of the Protestant Bohemians. What happened next is debated, but the Bohemians either wanted to perform a preemptive strike in anticipation of Ferdinand's predicted persecution, or violence was already done against the Protestants. The issue of Habsburg rule over Bohemia was also a key factor. On the 23rd of May, 1618, an assembly of Protestants went to the Hradschin, the royal castle, and insisted on seeing the imperial governors. After a heated exchange of words between the assembly, led by Count Thurn, and the imperial representatives, the imperials were thrown out of the council chamber's windows and fell, becoming infamously known as the Second Defenestration of Prague. This was the trigger for the Bohemian Revolt, and Europe would consequently be embroiled in an apocalyptic conflict for the next 30 years.
They said, boy, if you don't get out of here, they tossed my man out the window. They said, boy, if you don't get out of here with that, no. that's savage. He just tossed my man's out the window. He said, I'm not even trying to hear what you got to say. Like, leave my presence at once, you heathen. That's probably how they sounded too.
This scandalous act in Bohemia and the brewing insurrection took the courts of all Europe by surprise, including the Bohemians themselves. Despite the state of affairs, they were cautious and refrained from demanding the deposition of Ferdinand for now, instead addressing their demands to the sickly Holy Roman Emperor Matthias, maintaining a pretense of loyalty. Nevertheless, military preparations and actions began immediately by both sides. In mid-June, the Bohemians wrote to the Protestant Union, asking them for full admittance and military support in the upcoming conflict. In order to incentivize this further, they offered Frederick V, the leader of the Union, the Kingship of Bohemia for their support. In a diplomatic mistake, they offered the same to the rulers of Savoy, Saxony and Transylvania, which led the wider Union to declare neutrality in the conflict, contradictory to their leader, the Elector of the Palatinate.
Didn't I tell you that Bohemia would join them? Didn't I tell you? I knew he would. I knew it. Didn't I tell you?
The ruler of Saxony, the most powerful Protestant province of the empire, had never wanted a war with the emperor, and when Ferdinand offered him protection against any Protestant retaliation in return for neutrality, he accepted and mobilized his forces to secure his border with Bohemia. The Duke of Savoy, however, responded to the Bohemian call for help swiftly and sent a 2,000-strong force under Ernst von Mansfeld, along with financial aid for the conflict. In May 1618, this Protestant force captured the stronghold of Pilsen, marking one of the first major engagements of the 30 Years' War.
Is this like some type of computer game? Because the animations look like some type of computer CGI simulator.
The Spanish Habsburgs, at this moment in time headed by Philip III, were occupied by the 80 Years' War against the Dutch Republic and their allies. Despite internal problems, they were still the most powerful state in Europe, and their aid would be key to the Catholic cause. By mid-1619, 7,000 veteran Spanish troops would be sent from the Low Countries in order to support Ferdinand. The Austrian Archduke also received similar support from inside the Holy Roman Empire. Bavaria, the most powerful Catholic principality, and its Duke Maximilian I saw Protestant Bohemia as a threat to its authority, and also considered the Elector Palatine, a fellow member of the Wittelsbach family, as one of his main rivals for the position of Elector. However, these preparations did not yet make war inevitable. Though they were taking military precautions, it was not yet clear that the war would erupt so violently. The Habsburgs viewed their insurrectionist Bohemian subjects as rebellious children, and themselves as the patient patriarchs, willing to listen to their complaints. In addition, many Bohemians did not want to entirely reject the dynasty, but instead wished to simply reinforce the religious toleration concessions gained in Rudolf's Letter of Majesty.
I understand, because you think about you're at a place where you're finally able to practice a religion that's not that's not being a Protestant or being a Catholic. You can practice your own. You can practice a different religion. Like, do you understand how liberating that is? Oh wow, I can worship my own God instead of the one that the government picks for me. Like, just think about that though. The government was determining who you served as your higher being, as your deity. Man, oh man. No way should you let the government tell you what you believe in. That's when they get you.
This relatively lax start to the conflict would end when Holy Roman Emperor Matthias died in March 1619. This forced the Bohemians into a decision. They would either have to lay down their arms and accept Ferdinand as their king, or denounce him and risk open war. They went with the second option and offered the crown to Frederick V of the Palatinate instead. In May 1619, the main army of the Protestants, led by Count Thurn, marched on Vienna and put the city under siege, despite not having any siege weapons to launch a decisive assault. These successes were not to last, as on the 10th of June, the Catholic commander, the Count of Bucquoy, routed Mansfeld and his 2,000-strong contingent at the Battle of Sablet in southern Bohemia. This cut off communications between Prague and Thurn's besieging army, forcing them to withdraw. Even worse, Mansfeld's correspondence was captured by the Imperials, revealing in detail the Duke of Savoy's dealings with the Bohemians, Dutch, Venetians and English. He was embarrassed, and, now aware that he would not be elected the Bohemian king, ended his support for the rebels. On the 28th of August 1619, Ferdinand II was finally elected the Holy Roman Emperor in Frankfurt, but he still had problems to deal with. In late August, the Prince of Transylvania, Bethlen Gabor, began the conquest of Habsburg Hungary, and on October 13th defeated the last Habsburg army in the region. Soon afterwards, he moved up the Danube and joined forces with Thurn, moving in November to lay siege to Vienna a second time. Again, this apparent success was not to last. On the 27th of November 1619, Gabor received reports that a large Polish army, assisting the Catholic Ferdinand, had entered Upper Hungary and cut his communications with his Transylvanian heartland. This ruined the second siege of Vienna and forced Gabor to rush back to Hungary and Thurn to move back to Bohemia. Imperial diplomats then negotiated with Gabor to cease his support for the Bohemians, and he accepted on the 20th of January 1620.
Oh, so now there's a line separating the countries now. Okay, I mean, maybe this line is imaginary, but dividing their empire in half is pretty big, though.
As 1620 progressed, another Spanish army of 20,000 men began its march from the Low Countries into the Palatinate under the command of Ambrosio Spinola, aiming to secure Catholic League territories such as Bavaria. At the same time, an army of around 30,000 Catholic troops conquered Upper Austria, led by the Count of Thiel, while Bucquoy's force had conquered Lower Austria. This done, the imperial armies under Bucquoy and Thiel united and thrust into Bohemia, seeking a decisive engagement. On the 8th of November 1620, the imperial army met the rebels just beyond the walls of Prague at Bila Hora.
The fact that they brought all this, I just bit my tongue. The fact that they brought all the smoke to Bohemia, they said, oh, you want to rebel against us? Bet. We bringing the smoke. They brought all three of them armies together. They said, we taking this hell or high water, bro.
The White Mountain. The rebels were around 21,000 strong, with 11,000 footmen, 5,000 arquebusier horse, 5,000 additional Hungarian light footmen, 5,000 arquebusier horse, 5,000 additional Hungarian light cavalry, and 10 cannons. Their army drew up in the Dutch style, constituting two lines of battle, with interspersing cavalry squadrons between each battalion of infantry. Half of the Hungarian light cavalry manned the extreme right wing, while the other half functioned as a mobile reserve in the rear. Commanded by Christian of Anhalt, the rebel army set up on the high ground of the White Mountain Ridge, digging trenches in front of their line. Thick fog obscured the Imperial approach on the morning of Sunday the 8th of November, and advance guard forces secured two crossings of a stream 2 kilometers in front of the rebel position.
Is this like the first real military, modern military practices? Like one of the first military practices we've seen. We've seen a lot of modern dictatorship society ways, as you got propaganda. Because of course, and I know the people in the Catholic countries are telling you how bad being a Protestant is, and people in the Protestant are telling you how bad being a Catholic is. And like I see these modern warfare these modern war tactics, like the line, like the lining up of the armies, and the digging in trenches, and the using the cannons. Like I like the subtle modern war, like the modern like military way of like executing battle.
After Ferdinand's army crossed, they began to form up. The Catholic League's forces, commanded by Thiel, set up on the left, while the Imperial army, led by Bucquoy, took up position on the right. 17,000 Habsburg footmen were organized into 10 large blocks, known as tercios, and were comprised mainly of pikemen and musketeers. The Imperial cavalry, meanwhile, consisted of 6 regiments of lightly armed harquebusiers armed with a long harquebus carbine, and 4 regiments of heavily armed cuirassiers wielding wheel-lock pistols and straight swords.
They had the guns on them too. Okay, I mean, yeah, like of course during this time it was muskets and those flintlock rifles that you shot it and it was like a little flint match, and then the pin would kick up and boom, and then the bullet would fire. Then you would have to reload and take a whole decade to reload the pistol. Like the pistol, like I've seen it, like the pistol was like this long. It kind of had like a little, it looked kind of like a shotgun, to be honest, like an early model of a shotgun, like you just held it like, boom, like that, like you held it like that.
Implementing them were 300 light cavalry from Catholic Poland. The army of Ferdinand II also had 12 cannons in support. The imperial commanders knew that time was on their side, so they did not have to attack immediately. However, the Duke of Bavaria Maximilian wanted a quick and decisive victory, so they decided to attack. Ever since they had been brought up, the imperial cannon had been firing uphill without much impact. At around 15 minutes to midday, all 12 guns fired at once to signal the advance. Imperial tercios and cavalry on the less steep right side advanced up the hill, opposed by 2 cavalry regiments under Anhalt's son, Christian the Younger, who wanted to perform an active defense. Meanwhile, Terns' elite infantry division crashed into the Habsburg infantry, who were laboring up the slope. The Bohemian army initially had success in their downhill advance, breaking through the Imperial cuirassier cavalry and into one of their tercios by using their wheel-lock pistols. Pikes clashed and firearms sounded for a while. However, Thiel then sent more cuirassiers and dragoons to the right flank under Bucquoy and drove the rebel cavalry away, rallying the tercios to push forward in the process. Witnessing their horsemen retreating under the pressure, the Bohemian infantry began to follow suit, and the Hungarians in reserve scattered. Meanwhile, the Catholic League's forces advanced up the steeper slope on the left towards the rebel right flank. Due to the unfavourable terrain on this area of the field, the Bohemian contingents manning it managed to halt the advancing League tercios. However, rumours of 300 Polish cavalry having already flanked the rebels spooked the remaining Bohemian units, and they attempted to flee, crushed in the field, and Thiel's forces entered Prague the next day. 47 leaders of the rebellion were put to death.
Right, man, we got 5 more episodes in this series. So you already know, you see the early propaganda, use of propaganda, bigging up your religion to make it seem like it's the hot stuff. Then you got modern military tactics. Look at all this stuff. Look at all this stuff that's being used today. A lot of stuff is being used today in third world countries mostly. But anyway, thank you again for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Don't forget to share your video wherever you share videos at. Also, don't forget to turn on my post notifications so you don't miss an upload. Please be safe. Have a great day. Stay on your grind. I'm out. Peace.